so thank you. Our final, before we move to our two local board members, is our Waitemata Low Carbon Network. And we've got Sarah, Grant, and team. Lots of lawyers in the house today. Warm welcome. Oh, do you want to just pop on the... Lovely, thank you.
Kia ora koutou. We're from the Waitemata Low Carbon Network and the Equal Justice Project. The Equal Justice Project is a group of over 100 University of Auckland law students who are extremely concerned about our futures and climate change. We have seen the statistics. The science is irrefutable. Climate change is already impacting communities around the world and in Auckland. As young people, it is obvious urgent action is needed. We support all the previous submissions on declaring a climate change emergency. The decision you are making today will directly impact our future. As a group of young people, we urge you to make the right decision. I'll pass on to Lavi and the rest of our group to discuss the legal aspects further.
I firstly just want to say that the effects of climate change are radical. Climate change continues to affect us. It is ongoing and it is growing. The New Zealand Productivity Commission has said that there needs to be radical change as well. To quote them, they've said, "These changes mean that the shift from the old economy to a new low emissions economy will be profound and widespread." It is clear that action needs to be taken, but not just simple action, radical action. What we think is that declaring a climate emergency is what needs to happen. As mentioned in previous speeches, there have been many other councils and many other cities who have declared climate emergencies, but Auckland is a big city and Auckland has a responsibility to also do this and to also be leaders in this change. We have an opportunity to be one of the big cities that make this impact. I think we should. We think we should. We should.
Kia ora. Just speaking further on the climate emergency declaration, this won't be a legally binding decision, but it has moral authority and it reflects the urgency that we're facing right now. It sends a strong message to management and staff within the Auckland Council organisation, and it gives them space to reach further, to be more bold in their recommendations and plans and actions. It sends a strong message to your CCOs that they need to be stepping up, and it also informs, importantly, the people of Auckland. There's been lots of questions about how do we really build mandate for strong action. Well, one of our answers to that is that you need to actually be telling the truth about the terrible impacts that we're facing and the scale of change that we need. Leadership is not about taking the path of least resistance. It is about carving a path forward. Right now, I think you're a step behind. You need to be a step in front and changing public opinion, because they can't make the right decisions without the right information.
So,
oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll jump in. Kia ora koutou. Just in terms of your question, Councillor Darby, I think you need to change the title of the document you're going to adopt and call it the Climate Change Emergency Plan, because that's what it needs to be. We've looked through it, and with no disrespect, there's a lot of actions in that plan that are kind of business as usual. And as you've heard today from everyone here and ourselves, You need to make it a lot more radical, and the Productivity Commission has said we need radical change. So you need to reflect back on that and make those actions and moves much more radical than what you're doing. We'll be providing feedback. We don't think you need to hold and wait for that. You need to get this document out to consultation. You need to get the feedback. We'll be providing feedback for you. But also, in terms of declaring an emergency, there's a whole lot of actions and moves in that document that you can actually just get on with and deliver them quickly. Thank you.
So thank you for listening to us today. We urge you to declare a climate change emergency and action the Climate Action Plan in a meaningful and genuine way. Thank you.
Take a couple of questions. It's pretty self-explanatory and pretty clear. Councillor Newman.
Thank you. How about we have a plan change to have proper subdivision and building controls to abate the amount of sediment and shit that flows into our rivers, lakes, streams, into our harbours and chokes those marine environments? Wouldn't that be a piece of really powerful work to actually address some of the problems that we're facing in that space?
Kia ora, Councillor. I think one of the important things about your climate change emergency plan is you need to also look through the moves and actions and determine where do you have the greatest leverage. So at the moment there's a spread of moves and actions, and that's great, but I think in reflecting on it, you need to go, where are we as a council and our CCOs able to make some really significant changes because we hold the decision making. And it's things like public transport that was talked about before. It's things like, Councillor, that you're mentioning as well. It's about land use. Where do you as a local authority hold those levers and can make the greatest change and impact? And I think you need to reflect on that emergency action plan with that in mind. Thank you for the question.
And Councillor, remember we're working on as part of the Okura project as the pilot area, we've got the plan change that we will be putting through with regard to managing sediment. Don't have to wait for a climate action plan to do that. Any other questions? Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Thank you for your presentation. I've been hearing a lot about tell the truth, and I'm wondering where that's coming from, because all of us all agree that there are climate change issues and that we are, it's pretty serious. So what are the lies that we are telling them?
Not so much a lie, but an omission to communicate thoroughly with the public. So people here in this room have been informed by staff about, there's been scientific papers done within council. They've been informed of the risks that we face and the urgency which we face, but that hasn't, in our view, been communicated properly to the public. And so what we're saying is that, Auckland Council needs to come out and actually say, look, this is dire. Our young people, they have no hope in their future unless, we're acting now, and that they need, you need to say, look, we need to take radical action because this is an emergency, and build that understanding and mandate among people within Auckland. I mean, right now, we've still got people arguing over car parking spaces and speed limits and all this kind of stuff. We need to put our priorities straight.
Well said. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. It was really, really interesting. Now, Grant, I think you were around Manukau around about the 2000s, 2004. Is that correct? I think you were. I've actually got a report that I am giving to a lot of people. That you might remember the Audit 2000 report and the Montgomery Watson report, and it was something that I'd actually initiated way back then, and Sir Barry Curtis supported me. And a lot of what you're talking about with the stormwater, the infill housing and the flooding issues and the climate change and everything, a lot of what is in this report and the way that we do building consents, resource consents, a lot of that is actually in here. But so I'd like to give this document to you, and maybe you might like to have another wee look at it, because I think a lot of what New Zealand planners and is a lot of really good recommendations are actually here, and a lot of those haven't been happening. Just very quickly, in my own ward, Howick, in parts of Pakuranga, a lot of parts of Howick and Pakuranga in the 2000s, there was a moratorium put on lots of parts of Howick and Pakuranga for infill housing, but come the 2010, the Super City and the Unitary Plan, that sort of superseded, and now we're actually having some really, really extreme weather events, and I'm visiting, whenever we have an extreme weather event, I'm going to people's homes where insurance isn't paying out anymore, it's no quality of life. So we have actually got an emergency happening, but it's been happening for a long time. And we actually have a whole lot of things that we could have been doing, and we haven't been doing it. So I've been most interested listening to what you've had to say, so I'd like to, who shall I hand this to? Thank you.
Okay, right. Thank you, Councillor Stewart, and just acknowledging your role as our chair of an emergency management committee. Last very quick question, Councillor Walker, because we've got our two local board chairs waiting, and then we do need to move on to
It's
our
really
item.
just a request. My observation is, on a week-by-week basis, this council consistently makes decisions that plunge us into a climate crisis on a decision-by-decision basis. So what I would ask you is, yes, come here today, but you need to be here, people need to be here at just about every meeting. Seriously. Because that's how bad it is. So we are committing ourselves last week, the week before that, on an ongoing basis around major capital decisions that plunge us into a climate crisis. And I could document any number of them. I speak up, but there is insufficient support around the table on an issue-by-issue basis.
Councillor, I think we could debate that at length, and now's not the moment, because I think there are quite a lot of councillors that will fundamentally disagree with you, so I'm not going to ask our group to get tied into that debate. I'm going to move that we thank our group most warmly for the presentation, seconded by Councillor Filipaina. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And thank you